Ben Nelson is retired. Oh, boo-hoo! Yeah, get. That's what I say to Ben Nelson. He's the, they call him a moderate Democrat, conservative Democrat. No, he's a corporatist Democrat. He's a Democrat who will take whatever paycheck he's given and do whatever that guy told him to do, because he has no interest in policy, principle, never had an interest in his entire life. So he's now leaving the race in Nebraska. Here's a guy who screwed over Democrats 118 different times. He's the guy that almost single-handedly killed the public option if President Obama was ever interested in it in the first place. But he put his foot down and said, if I'm going to sign on to the health care bill, no way is there going to be a public option. No way is there going to be any option for anyone to go outside of the current health insurance system. You must buy from the health insurance companies that pay my bills. That's the kind of guy Ben Nelson is. He did it again in finance reform, made it much weaker. He did it again when he came to the unemployment compensation. He wanted to make sure that that did not go through. He has joined the Republicans on almost every important issue, and he allows the Republicans to come by and say, oh, well, you see that? It must be bipartisan because Ben Nelson agrees with me. Joe Lieberman and Ben Nelson agree. He was the worst of the worst. When you turn on your television set on any other station, including MSNBC, especially if Morning Joe's talking to him, they'll be like, oh, Ben Nelson, he was so bipartisan. He was what the Senate should be about, compromise and bringing Republicans and Democrats together to screw the middle class. That's what Ben Nelson was about. Now, get a load of this liar during his press conference on why he's stepping down.
There's much more that needs to be done to keep America strong. And while I relish the opportunity to undertake the work that lies ahead, I also feel it's time for me to step away from elective office, spend more time with my family, and look for new ways to serve our state and nation. Therefore, I'm announcing today that I will not seek re-election. Simply put, it's time to move on.
Yeah, God bless.
Get.
He had terrible hair. Okay, listen, I couldn't be happier about it. Obviously, that's a YouTube video, not a press conference. He didn't want to face the press. He just wanted to get the hell out of town. Now, listen to this lie about how much he cares about the integrity of the system.
Public office is a place for public service, not personal profit.
Yeah.
It's about promoting a common good, not the agenda of the radical right or the radical left. It's about fairness for all, not privileges for the few. And it's about protecting the rights of individuals, even if it angers the majority. I hope and believe I have fulfilled these principles to the best of my ability.
Radical left. Who the hell's the radical left? What are you talking about? We haven't seen the radical left, I guess, since the 1960s. Like, what radical position were you protecting the country from? Well, that the banks shouldn't rob us? Is that the radical left? When you agreed with the Republicans to water down financial reform so that it became a joke? Well, public option was favored by 60 to 70% of the country. So what radical left were you protecting us from? 70% of the country? Please. And then did you notice at the end, he's like, look, sometimes you have to do what's against the will of the majority. Yeah, I know, you did it all the time because you're like the minority, the 1%, keep paying my campaign financing and hire all my staffers and are probably going to hire me when I retire. So you know what? I just had to, vote against the majority. Man, I can't describe to you the level of disdain I have for Ben Nelson. And of course, he screwed over the Democrats one more time on his way out. You know why? Because he didn't make the decision until really late. Democrats, in their infinite foolishness, had already spent $1.5 million campaigning for Ben Nelson. That's $1.5 million that could have gone to true progressives across the country who actually want to fight to make a difference. Instead, they flushed it down the toilet, campaigning for a guy who later said, forget it, I'm going to take a lobbyist job anyway, as he ironically tells us, you shouldn't be in it for private profit. But look, as always, I will tell you what's going to happen ahead of time. It's a guarantee that Ben Nelson will be hired as either they won't say lobbyist because that's too obvious, as a consultant or advisor to one of these either legal groups or business groups in Washington, D.C., some from back home, I'm sure, in Nebraska, that have been buying him his whole career, and he will advise them. In other words, he'll be a lobbyist, and he'll do it for private gain. We'll see if I'm wrong. Maybe he goes and becomes a high school teacher. All right. Yeah, you see what happens, okay?